I committed 24 hours to fixing my writing slump with no idea of whether it would work. Because y'all, when we get sucked into a writing slump, it is like trying to haul ourselves out of quicksand. After months of feeling like this, I decided enough was enough. I was making a change, so I sat down and I came up with a plan. I decided I would commit 24 hours to getting back in the writing groove. I made strict rules and a schedule for the whole day, but I completely ignored one thing when I was planning my reset day, and it came back to bite me quicker than I expected. So here is how those 24 hours actually went, what worked, what backfired, and what I learned about breaking out of writing slumps. Before we get into that, y'all take a deep breath. You've made it to the writing woods. It is a gorgeous snowy day, as you can tell. It snowed all day yesterday, and my husky and I were out here tromping around. He had the time of his life. And y'all know that there is no stress here, there's no pressure. We are just hanging out talking about writing. For more of this feeling, head over to writingwoods.com, where our little community is having the best time. We're getting to know each other and building sustainable writing practices together. So y'all, I have been stuck in the worst cycle lately. I fell out of my writing rhythm because, you know, life. And then I tried to get back at it. And I know y'all know how I felt when I'm just staring at those pages and it's just blank. I can't connect with my writing. I can't connect with my characters. I'm thinking instead of feeling, and writing is just hard. It's hard. I'm forcing words out. And to make matters worse, I feel all this pressure because I hadn't written in a few weeks, and I feel like I have to get back at it. I know I need to get back at it. But then when I sit down to write, it's so hard and I wind up not getting much writing done at all. And then I start feeling like a failure. And then there's even more pressure because now I just wasted what feels like another writing day. And I feel more and more behind. The harder I try, the worse it gets, and the more my instinct is just to avoid writing altogether, because that's the natural thing to do, right? If something feels hard, if it's making us feel bad, then we don't want to do it. And then that contributes even more to feeling like a failure, an imposter, and the next time I sit down to write, it's worse and worse and worse. And I'm sitting here watching this happen and thinking, I've got to do something. I've got to break this cycle. I've got to do something drastic. So that's when I decided I was going to commit 24 hours to writing. I had no idea if it would work, if it would make things worse, but I had to try something. So me being me, I sat down and I made a plan, and I started with some rules. My rules were, number one, no pressure. The goal is to reset and reconnect, not to produce. No worrying about word counts, output, none of that. Because I knew that the pressure I was putting on myself was already a problem and was compounding all of the issues that I was experiencing. Second rule, short sessions, 30 minutes max. I was not trying to have a 3-hour-long writing marathon. Even though I was writing all day, I was committing all day to writing, to my work. I knew that I couldn't sustain a full day of being actively writing. So I planned to do 30-minute sessions with very intentional activities in between. Number 3, no digital distractions. Avoid devices except when absolutely necessary. Number 4, move and breathe. Focus on movement, yoga, walking. Movement is so important to creativity and to overall health and well-being, and I wanted to make sure I was incorporating that. Number 5, reflect. My purpose in doing this wasn't just to get one good writing day in. I wanted to reset, reconnect. So in order to do that, I decided that reflection and journaling was going to be a big part of the day. Number 6, rest is part of writing. My goal for the day was not to push myself as hard as I could. I was trying to find a rhythm that worked for me. So incorporating rest needed to be a big part of that. And number 7, be kind, be nice to myself. I'm not always the best at that. I tend to be pretty hard on myself, but the day was an experiment and I wanted to remember that and to make an active effort to think about the way that I was talking to myself and make sure that I wasn't saying things to myself like, you're a failure, You should be able to do this. It's not that hard. I decided to be very intentional about being kind to myself, having positive self-talk, and remembering that this was a growth thing. This was not me reaching the pinnacle of something. This was a beginning for me. And I was not to introduce judgment into the day. No judgment. I'm laughing because that is a really tough thing for me. I think it's tough for a lot of us. But I know that overall, everything in my life gets better when I am kind to myself. So I wrote these down. I had these rules staring me in the face throughout the day because I want to remember my goals. I had really specific intentions for this day. It was not about producing. It was about reconnecting and breaking that nasty cycle of guilt and pressure so that I could move forward in a more productive and fulfilling way. So in addition to my rules, I had a full schedule. I blocked out the day and determined what I would be doing at each part of the day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my schedule and tell you about my intentions for that time and then tell you what actually happened. Now, most of this is going to be coming straight from my journal. I was writing throughout the day. I was typing, working on my project, and then I was sitting with my journal and a fountain pen and reflecting on the day, thinking about how it was going, trying to notice how I was feeling, and thinking about what I was learning about myself, about my process, and how I might be able to apply this going forward. So here was the plan. For the morning, I had this from 7 to 9 a.m. Wake up slowly, a calm start, no devices. Start with a short walk or gentle yoga. Just wake up my body and mind. Mindful journaling. I wanted to reflect on how I was feeling and set my intention for the day. I woke up at 6:30. Which is before I intended, but a little bit late for me. And getting off to a good start. I had been sick the previous day and I was feeling pretty lousy. I was worried about being able to focus. And part of me had already thought about maybe pushing back my writing day, which had been on my calendar for at least a week. But I had told my family that I would be unreachable for the day. I was not planning to be on my phone and I did not want to be worried about notifications. So my plan was to basically treat it like a hiking day, like I'm out of service, y'all. So I was already feeling kind of anxious when it started because, the day before I'd felt awful. But I decided that it was never going to be perfect. That was the whole point of this thing. So let's just go ahead and jump in and see what happens. I woke up, I thought to myself, hey, today's your writing day. And I immediately wanted to reach over, grab earbuds, and start listening to a podcast. Just instantly craving that input. And I was really thinking to myself, like, oh, that's not great. That's not what I want to do the first thing when I wake up. I like listening to podcasts. I like audiobooks while I'm hiking or driving or doing the dishes. But I don't want to be consuming all the time. So I kind of just took note of that impulse. And instead of listening to anything, I got up and went about my day. I went down and checked on Rocket, my crazy husky. I built a fire and then I sat down with some breakfast and my journal. And I did a little bit of intention setting. I journaled about how I was feeling. All of this stuff is coming straight from those reflections. And I set my intention for the day. I wrote it out specifically. My intention was to reconnect with my writing. So that was my baseline for me to come back to. I also wrote down some affirmations, which honestly, I always used to think affirmations were so silly. But the more that I've been using them in my life, they really do have a place. They really are effective, I think, in helping to shift our identity and the way we see ourselves, which can create more lasting change than just changing our behavior. And I've also noticed that when I just let myself write down some affirmations without thinking about it too much, it tends to reveal some things. And what came out when I sat down was, I am a writer. My story is important. My time is my own. My story deserves my day, and I deserve to write. And I thought that was really interesting. looking back on it, I deserve to write. So part of me was feeling like I did not deserve to take the time, to take a full day to write. And that is such an interesting shift, because when we say things out loud, it's usually, I need to make my writing important. My writing is a priority. It deserves my time. But here I was somehow thinking that I did not deserve to put that time into something that I love and something I'm passionate about. I'll probably be revisiting this later. I'm not sure I've fully considered the implications of that, but it was definitely interesting and something that I was not looking for. It just arose as part of this process. And I think that might be a theme throughout this little journey that I took. After my journaling, I put on a record and did some yoga by the fire. And that was nice. The music, and especially the more tactile feeling of putting on a vinyl record and listening to that while I was doing some kind of gentle stretching yoga and just warming up, engaging some of my muscles. That felt good. I feel like that woke me up and helped me start kind of engaging with the world in a good way. But I also noted that I was already having thoughts like I'm wasting time. So I made a cup of tea and I sat down for my first writing session a little after 8:30. That brings me to our second block of the day. Late morning was all about low pressure writing, and it was blocked out from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. I plan to do micro writing sessions that were 20 to 30 minutes long with 10 to 15 minute breaks where I could have a snack, go for a little walk, and reflect on my writing sessions. It was all about just noticing but not judging. That was my plan. So what actually happened was I sat down to write, and as I'm sure y'all have experienced when you haven't been working on your project for a while, for reference, I am on the tail end of my manuscript. I'm in the last 5th or 6th of my book. And I've talked about deep outlining and why it is fantastic, and I did not take my own medicine. Something changed in the plot, and instead of going back and fully redoing my deep outline for the rest of the story, I decided to just wing it, and I got stuck. So I sat down to write, and I have since done a little bit outlining on it and hopefully have more of a plan that I can keep this from happening again. But it had been long enough at this point that I had absolutely no connection to the voice, the characters, the plot. I had forgotten what was happening, especially because I started writing out of chronological order. I was jumping around a little bit to just try to get something flowing, which is not a bad thing in itself, but at this point, when I came back to it, I was standing at the very bottom of the hill. So when I sat down to write, I spent about an hour just rereading previous chapters, trying to get a sense of my characters again, the voice, what was going on, the motivations, all of those things that we really need to be holding close to us and feeling for it to come across well on the page. And I made an effort to not judge and not think negative things about this process, because that was what this day was for. But I definitely started to get frustrated, and that frustration led to some anxiety because I was feeling like I needed to do something, like this was hard, I needed to change something. But I did keep working on it. I won't say pushing through, because I was trying not to push per se, but I stuck with it. I actually started with 10-minute sessions and then worked up to 20 and 30. And I have a note on here that I took 30 minutes to answer one important email. I was feeling distracted at the thought of missing messages, especially as it relates to my business. And I decided that answering that one important email would hopefully help me put that aside a little bit. Even now, I'm not sure how I feel about that decision. I think there's an argument to be made either way, it went against my intentions for the day. It definitely distracted me, pulled me out a little bit. It may have given me a little bit of a respite from thinking about that situation. But then once I sent that email, I was thinking about the response. So in the end, it was probably kind of a wash. And I will come back to that later. So all of this is going on from 8:30 to about 12:30. And by 12:30, I was feeling really tired. I was feeling mentally exhausted, fatigued, emotionally fatigued. And I was noticing that every little thing, every small item seemed to be adding kind of a disproportionate amount of mental strain. I just felt really impacted by even small things. I did write down that I experienced a moment of joy in the late morning, and I kind of want to hold on to that because that's something that I haven't been feeling with my writing, is that moment of joy. So if my goal was to reconnect with my writing, that was a very clear win. I had not been feeling joy around my writing, around my story. I'd been feeling stress and pressure and guilt, and all of that was swarming and blocking that beautiful feeling that I have when it comes to storytelling. So that moment of joy was like this little ember. It's almost like trying to start a fire with wet wood. You know, there was so much smoke, and all I'm seeing is the smoke, and I keep trying and just it won't catch. And I see this little spark, this little light, this little ember that is bright. And even if it's only for a moment, it gives me that hope of thinking that maybe I'm on the right track here, and maybe I could get that fire back. So by early afternoon, all day writing was feeling like a really hard sell. Even though I was not writing nonstop, I was getting tired. I felt like maybe I was putting too much pressure on my environment being perfect, but my intention, my goal with that when I started was to make sure that the time between my short writing sessions was restorative. Make sure I was doing activities that rested my mind and my creative energy and restored it rather than depleting it. Or worse, becoming distracting, where I go down the rabbit hole and then it's been an hour and I'm completely off track. I needed that structure. I needed very specific rules about what I was doing between writing sessions. But it was draining me. I was feeling really fatigued. The other issue was that while I was supposed to be no devices and my family knew not to expect responses from me, I did turn my volume on my phone up. I left it in a different room, but I turned it up in case it was an emergency and someone needed to reach me. My mom texted me and said she was going to be in the area getting lunch and asked if I wanted her to drop off lunch for me. And I got that and I thought, well, that sounds nice. Then I don't have to worry about fixing lunch, right? And if she's just dropping something off, surely it won't hurt my process. What's the harm? So I told her thank you, and yes, that'd be nice. The issue with that came about an hour or two later. In my next block, which was afternoon, was for deep rest and inspiration. It was supposed to be 12 to 2. My first item was lunch and rest, eat something nourishing, and allow my mind to wander. And then I actually had some time blocked off for creative input. So I wanted to specifically read something inspiring. And I had a collection of short pieces written in and about the national parks. I had that sitting right underneath my notebook on my counter, so I was ready for that. And optional nap or quiet time. I don't nap. As a general rule, I haven't been able to nap since college, when I was a sleep-deprived student athlete, and it wasn't so much napping as it was passing out when I had 5 minutes. So I put that on there more as a here's something you could do that might be beneficial, but knowing me, probably wasn't going to happen. I was really thinking more of like the quiet time side or non-sleep deep rest kind of thing. But actually, when it hit 12:30, y'all, I was feeling so exhausted. All I wanted to do was curl up on the couch by the fire and take a nap. That was on my list. That was scheduled. I had nap time scheduled. So I went down, I curled up on the couch, and my brain immediately started thinking about how it would look if my mom dropped by and saw me taking a nap after I told her I'll be unreachable today because I'm having a writing day and I want to focus. Now there's some logic there, but also I had naps scheduled. I knew when I made my schedule that rest was important, and yet I was worried about the way it would look. I was worried about the optics more than what I actually needed. So what I wound up doing was journaling and reflecting, and that wasn't bad, it was good, but I didn't get the rest that I needed. So after that, she came by, brought me lunch. I ate lunch while listening to a record. It was really nice. And then I went and grabbed Rocket, took him for a walk, got some fresh air, let my mind kind of drift. And I did notice that when my mind was wandering, it was wandering to other things. It was thinking about business and life. I wasn't thinking about my story, which I think is something to be aware of. I don't think it's an indication of whether what I was doing in that moment was right. I think it was a signal about the previous weeks that I had had. Because when I am feeling good, when I'm in the flow with my writing, during those moments when my mind drifts, it drifts to my story. And that's when I work things out. So that was something that I noticed, not necessarily an indication of whether the day was going well or not. After walking Rocket, I did feel slightly refreshed, and I felt a little hesitant about getting back to writing. But honestly, that is better than I've been feeling. So I count that as a win. My plan for mid-afternoon from 2 to 4, it was supposed to be a second block of micro sessions, 20-30 minutes with breaks and reflection. So basically the same as late morning. So I went back to it, and by 2:30, I was feeling rough. I was stressed. I was forcing words out, and I was really craving some kind of input. I wanted to listen to something. I wanted to watch something, read something. I just wanted to get out of my head really badly. So I took a break. I went down to get firewood, and when I came back up, I sat down with my journal and did some reflections. I noticed that I was feeling absolutely exhausted, and I was questioning, was it from the deep work that I was doing, the focus? Was it from the emotional processing and all the reflection that I was doing in between? Because that does take a lot of energy. Or does the quiet just allow me to notice my fatigue when normally I wouldn't? Looking back now, I feel like it was probably a combination of all three, but I do think that third point really is something. I think that I am very used to pushing through and covering up my fatigue, especially mental and emotional fatigue. If I start getting too tired to do one thing, then I will just switch to something else. And it kind of happens in the background. I don't really sit and think about it like I was doing on this day. So it made it feel bigger. Not because it was bigger, but just because I was actually noticing it. And that really makes me think about my self-awareness and how much I don't notice. If I am able to really cover things up that well, that efficiently, how much just goes completely unnoticed. I also noticed at this point how much I was really thinking about that email that I sent earlier in the day. When would I get a response? What would the response to that be? And as I was reflecting on that, I wondered how much I would be thinking about that on a regular day. Was it because when I back up and I looked at that email, it was not as important as I was making it. And I decided that it was less about the result of that interaction and more about the fact that I wanted a dopamine hit. I wanted a win. I wanted that quick shot of feel-good chemicals in my brain. And that was the only thing that I had given myself to fixate on. Honestly, again, I don't know that I have an answer for this other than the possibility, the probability that I have been too often going for those quick dopamine hits. Y'all, I don't really scroll. I stay off social media for the most part. I come on here to answer YouTube comments and I hang out in our Rotten Woods community. But for the most part, I don't go for the dopamine hits like that. But there are still so many options for getting that quick dopamine hit these days. Most of it has to do with devices, screens. Our screens are just feeding us dopamine all day long, even if it's something that seems good, like practicing chess on my phone. I like doing that, but that is a quick dopamine hit. If I beat the computer, I feel good. And I don't know that I have been noticing or given enough thought to how often I do that. Not chess specifically, but all forms of dopamine. I did an episode recently about boredom, and this is really something that I've been thinking about for a while. How often do I allow myself to feel boredom, to feel that empty space, the complete lack of stimulation of quick dopamine, and just allow my mind to wander? And I think that's something I need to work on. And I think that some of the things that I saw during this reset day signal to me that that's something I need to work on. So at this point, it's about 2:30 p.m. This is how I'm feeling. And I am asking myself, how do I know when to stop writing? Because I have a plan, y'all. I have a schedule. And I do not like breaking that. When I set something in place, I want to finish it. But I'm sitting here staring at this computer, staring at my journal, and thinking, is this still good? Is this still helping? And I took my break. I came back to it. I didn't just walk away. But when I came back to it, it wasn't better. And so I wrote down how I was feeling about the writing right then. And I wrote that my attention was awful and I was forcing words out. I was feeling drained. I had a migraine and my break did not restore my attention. And when I put those things together, I thought, okay, you're done. You've hit your limit, and it is important to know when to walk away from anything. At that point, I felt like I was no longer doing what I'd set out to do. I was not reconnecting with my story. I was forcing words out, which was exactly what I was trying to get away from. So at 3 p.m., I shut my laptop, shut my notebook, went in, took a shower, tried to just get back to baseline, take care of my migraine. So if you're familiar with those, you know that you just got to get in a dark, quiet room and just wait. So I'm going to read you the rest of my schedule for the day. Late afternoon, early evening, 4:30 to 6 p.m. I was going to have a planning session where I mapped out a realistic writing routine for the next week. And then some light writing, maybe on a different project or free writing, and journaling and reflection. And then from 6 to 9, I was going to have supper, read, listen to music, and get to sleep early because it's important for brain health and creativity, and also that's just what I do. So after my shower, I came back in by the fire and I journaled and did some reflection and just kind of looked back on the day. I asked myself, did I accomplish what I set out to do? Did I meet my intention for the day, which was to reconnect with my writing and with my story? And I said, yes,
I did that. So no matter what, I call that a success. And then I asked myself, because I had this question going in, is this a weekly thing? I'd thought about, could I set aside one day a week that is a writing day? And more broadly, is that more of the rhythm that I need right now? Because I've always been someone who wrote every day, a little bit every day. But I've been working on a lot of projects that require large blocks of focused time and energy. And that's made it a little bit more difficult for me to get in just a little bit of writing every day. So I wondered if maybe my rhythm was changing and I needed to consider a different type of schedule. And my answer to that was maybe. Because, and here's exactly what I wrote. I said, I might need to adjust it to be a writing morning and cut it after lunch. But I like the purposeful intention, the journaling and reflection, the validation that writing is important, and the permission to release everything else. I think it's very worthwhile. I think setting aside a full writing day is definitely something to consider. But as far as doing it every week, it is probably not the most efficient long-term solution. Simply because it was draining. And I may change my outlook on this in the future. I may work up my stamina so that I can get more done during a full day. But as far as how much focus I can maintain, how much creative energy I have to give, I just was not able to restore it quickly enough to feel like doing this every week would be the most efficient, beneficial thing for me right now. With that said, in my specific situation, because I was so cold, my writing muscles were cold as this doggone snow. Having the full day to connect with the story again, I think was the best thing I could have done. Because I needed
that full hour plus in the morning to get back into it. And if I was trying to set aside hour-long writing sessions, well, shoot, my session's done, and now I gotta wait until the next one to actually start putting words down, and then I'm starting all over again. I think this really jump-started my creativity and my connection to my story. And so I was interested to see how my writing sessions would go after that, because my plan was, once I finished this, daily short writing sessions and weekly writing mornings where the first half of the day is devoted to writing. Okay, so the results of this little experiment. What did I like? It was intentional and it felt purposeful. The journaling and reflection was extremely useful, both in the moment and later as I was looking back on it and trying to draw some conclusions. It jump-started my reconnection with my story. It exposed things I would normally not notice, like the cravings that I was feeling for input and for dopamine, the fatigue, and also my need to look busy, my concern with the optics of what I was doing rather than what I actually needed and what would most benefit my writing and my story. On the downside, it was extremely draining and the commitment felt big. I felt a little bit overwhelmed. And so I know if I were to do this again, the positives and negatives would likely be somewhat different because I wouldn't need that complete reconnection with the story. That positive would be somewhat diminished, but perhaps my stamina would have increased to the point that it would not feel as overwhelming and maybe I wouldn't get as fatigued throughout the day. So this has been a couple of weeks ago now, and since then I have done a couple of writing mornings and I like the idea. I'm sticking with it. I do not think that I have been strict enough on myself during those writing mornings. My intention has been somewhat lacking. There's been too many devices, too many, just one thing, instead of that dedication, that commitment to it that I had when I did the full day. So that's something I'll be working on and see if I can improve. But I do think for me right now, that block from when I get up at say 6 a.m. to lunch is a really good amount of time for me to focus on writing and activities that are restorative and that represent the type of habits that I want to have and the type of person that I want to be. And honestly, it is really nice just as an anchor for some of my bad habits, some of the things that I get drawn into. I've been doing it on Tuesdays, and I know that when Tuesday morning comes around, I am going to be better. And I feel like I can't slip too far down bad habits if I have that drawing me back. It kind of helps adjust my baseline a little bit. It's like grading on a curve. It brings the whole average up. So I'm still working on finding a balance that's right for me, and I know that this will be completely different for anyone else who tries it. Your experience is going to be totally different than mine because you're a different person, you're a different writer, and I know that this would be different for me at different points in my life, not just in the broad if I was 10 years older, but different points in my writing journey, in my story. How am I feeling? What am I struggling with? All of that is going to change what I need in any given moment and how difficult it is for me to focus, to abstain from devices, to connect with my story. So I feel like I learned a lot from this. I hope you pick up something that makes you think about your writing differently or something you can try. And if you are inclined to try a writing day, I think the psychological benefit of that is real. That was definitely something that made a difference for me. And even though I broke a little bit, telling my family that I was going to be unreachable, telling other people what this is, it makes it more real, it makes it important. And I've talked about the idea of a grand gesture. That's from Cal Newport's book, Deep Work. And it's where you sacrifice something, whether it be energy, time, money, in order to get your work done. And it just gives it this psychological weight. It is you signaling to yourself that this is important, and setting aside a full day for writing and telling people about it definitely did that for me. And since then, my shorter writing sessions have been more productive. I've been more connected to my story. Writing is starting to feel good again. And that was exactly what I wanted when I started this experiment. Now, did I break my writing slump? I think so, sort of. It's not a one and done kind of thing. You're not going to just smash it on the ground. Just like you don't get off the couch and run a marathon, you're not just going to go from writing nothing at all to having the best writing sessions you've ever had. But I feel like I put a dent in my writing slump, and more importantly, I feel like I got over that hump. I feel like I did the hardest part in that one day, and now it's just adding on. It's just doing a little bit every day to keep moving in the right direction. So if you have been stuck in a writing slump, or even if you just want to invigorate your writing and give it that little jump start, set aside a full day. Tell your close friends and family what is going on, and affirm that your writing is important enough to take center stage, and you deserve that day to write. I don't know if anyone else needs to hear that. I didn't know I needed to hear that until it just came flowing out of my pen. But you deserve to focus on writing. You deserve to prioritize what you are passionate about. And you deserve to break out of your writing slump.